Greetings, friends. Today's guest is a fellow by the name of David Smyser. Back in 1972, David went on one of the most outrageous and most hilarious adventures that I have ever had the good pleasure to hear about. In short, this adventure saw him traveling from his home in Texas all the way to Arizona in order to mine bat guano in a dynamited cave in exchange for sessions of carbogen therapy, with carbogen being a chemical combination of carbon dioxide and oxygen that induces a hallucinatory/psychedelic state, which at one point apparently was used in psychotherapy, at least occasionally. I don't know if it was a common therapy, but it was used. It was considered at least semi-legitimate, at least experimentally legitimate. And yeah, that pretty much summarizes David's adventure. But of course, there's far more to it than that. As ludicrous as that scenario is, there are even more ludicrous aspects to it. And I say ludicrous in the very best way. To briefly give context to this story to help make sense of it, David was there with a group called the Servants of Awareness. We talk about this group extensively in this interview, but to give you, the listener, some context, the Servants of Awareness were a spiritual group started in the early 1960s by a fellow named Ralph William Doobie. It's actually two variations, and that story in itself is very strange. The story gets stranger the deeper you go, but the purpose here is not for me to give an exhaustive history of the awareness. I don't want to talk for 45 minutes leading into an hour and a half interview, so it's just suffice it to say the Servants of Awareness were a spiritual group in the United States, existent in the early 1970s. They had originally been called the Organization of Awareness, but they went by the Servants of Awareness by 1972. It was the servants that I had been researching and that I have been researching for years now. Some of my research had been used by Adam Gorightly, who is a weird historian, I think is what he calls himself. And David had seen that research and contacted Adam and asked to talk to me, and that is how we hooked up, got to know each other, and David told me his story. I found it absolutely hilarious, and I wanted to get it down. I wanted to share it with people. Really, my initial goal was my research into the Servants of Awareness, but David's story just wound up to be so damn funny and so wild and so crazy that I would love it even if it had nothing to do with the servants. So that's enough of an intro. I hope that's given enough context either way. Thank you very much for your time, friends. Oh, before we go on, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a like, giving my channel a subscription if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it. As I'm growing this channel, every like, every subscription helps me so much. And I would sincerely appreciate it, my friends. All right, so with no further ado, here is my interview with David Smyser.
Man, what the
You
heck?
mean the art of the fake background?
Where'd that come from?
What's that?
The background. What? I can't even tell what it is.
You mean it's like you're inside a cartoon spaceship?
Really?
Oh, you didn't do that on purpose?
Well, see, I hadn't used this in 15 years.
It's all good, man. It is funny to me. How you doing today? You doing good?
I'm feeling good. I don't know why, but I seem a little nervous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, just because, I live and die by Post-it notes. And I remember making Post-it notes of what we were going to discuss and this and that. And, of course, after our call, I threw them away. So I've been trying to recreate them
Well, I
And
do. I mean, I remember the conversation very clearly because it was fascinating to me. So I'm sure I'll be able to jog your memory a little bit with it. So it should be. Yeah, I'm having. I think I told you I found a woman named Zadie Lemon. I think I mentioned to you. She actually knew Ralph William Doobie, who was the man who started the organization Servants of Awareness. It was actually called the Organization of Awareness when he had it. I think he was dead by the time you had your encounter.
yes.
But and by the way, I just thought you might find this interesting. I have his novel right here. I don't know how many of these still exist. It was given to me by the she loaned it to me. The woman who now runs the organization. It's just a pretty fascinating thing to own. And I have his book of poetry.
Wow.
Yeah, just neat little historical artifacts. So yeah, it's all good, man. I think I think I'll be able
Now,
to jog your memory a little bit.
excuse me, is the Ziggy Lemon gal who runs the show now?
No, no. So Zadie Lemon, the way I found her was this book in the back. There's a dedication to Zadie Lemon.
Okay.
I thought for sure that was a made-up name because it's such a strange name. And so I started looking, and sure enough, there was a real Zadie Lemon, and she was actually in the news in the early '60s because she's 96 now. Real fascinating woman. She in the early '60s, she led her whole family. She had like 5 or 6 kids. I think some of them might have been adopted because they looked like different ethnicities. But she had a family, and she led them on a bike ride from Seattle to San Francisco. And at that time, that was a pretty big deal. Even now, it'd be a big deal because the youngest kid was like 6 years old or something. It was pretty gutsy thing she did.
Yeah.
And so looking back in newspaper archives, I was able to find all these little towns that would write stories about when she came through with her little family. Pretty neat stuff. But anyway, so I started looking into her, and she runs a wedding chapel in Seattle. And that turns out to be a whole interesting story in itself to briefly tell you, because I don't want this to take over our time. But so Ralph Doobie, who is the man who started the Organization of Awareness, who became the Servants of Awareness, as you know, he ordained her. And so she and some of her friends, what their thing was ushering in the age of Aquarius, specifically by marrying homosexual couples, which was very it wasn't socially acceptable at all then.
Yeah.
And one of the members, actually, I think he went to jail for it. His name was like Kevin Reinhold. But it was kind of their mission to marry homosexual couples, and so that's what she did. And she eventually, the chapel is still existed today, but I don't think it's running because she's 96, and by her own, I've talked to her on the phone, and she implies that she doesn't think she has too much time left. She says this with no sadness or anything. She just says, "Look, I'm 96 years old. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here," and her mind, as she seems very sharp. She tells me that she isn't, but she seems like she is. But anyway, so yeah, she's a fascinating woman, and I got her book of poetry. And it's been a neat experience.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, 96, that's a good run.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
who is it that's running the show now?
Her name is Vicky Turnbow.
Okay.
And yeah, she's the one. I've been in contact with Vicky quite a bit. Vicky actually she also joined after Ralph died. So she's really curious about what I find about Ralph Doobie. And she was also curious about your story because she knew about the guano mine, but she didn't know details about it. She just knew it happened. And so she was interested in hearing the details. But it's okay. I wanted to talk a little bit and give you time to settle in. And now I want to get back to hearing your story. And no pressure, man. I've been kicking myself in the butt for not recording our first conversation because I just thought it just went so well, and it was funny and fascinating. And I just want to hear the story again, man. There's no pressure at all. So, could you?
Have any notes from that?
I do, but I don't have them on me. But I can tell you what you told me. So you told me. Well, I've written. I started to write things about this, and then so I've gone over what you've told me a few times. And
Well, I guess what I was hoping for is if you'd give me a subject, I could discuss whatever that is. And I've written down names and.
yeah, well, let's just. I would like to just kind of start at the beginning. So you had your mother sent you and your brother down to Phoenix, was it, to be with the Servants of Awareness?
Well, to back up a little bit.
Okay.
David Wooster came to Wichita from Seattle, I believe. And I think that name is familiar to you.
It is.
It is, okay. So he came and he talked with my mother, and they sat at the kitchen table smoking cigarettes for hours on end. And I didn't get in on that. I met him and shook his hand, and he was an old hippie, so had long hair, even though I'm guessing he was in his 50s or 60 maybe. And then I believe I'm not real sure, but I'm thinking at one point in time, Art and Claire Pickering came to Wichita.
And how old were you?
I was 21, 22.
Okay.
Would you excuse me for a second?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is what I looked like then.
Oh, cool, man. Nice.
Yeah, that's my senior picture. And
that's a lush head of hair, man.
Well, yeah, I wish I had it back. Anyway, so yeah, that gives you an idea. I was young. I think this happened the summer after I graduated high school. So I was looking for adventures. So yes. So at some point in time, it must have been Art that had called and talked to my mother and suggested that my brother and I go to Phoenix.
Do you have any idea why they even began talking to your mother? Like, how did Pickering and Wooster even, why were they there at all?
I don't know about David Wooster. I think Art and Claire might have come to try to get her to recruit me and my brother. And see the way that.
Well, how did they find your mother, though? What was your mother's significance in all of this?
She was a seeker. She was into everything. She did calligraphy. She made quilts. She made pottery. She was a cake decorator. And along with this, she was looking for things that are a little more esoteric than those subjects. She was always looking at, she joined this Ananda Marga Yoga Society and made curtains for them. And
so she was just right. She regularly was looking for this kind of spiritual connection.
Yeah. And she jumped from thing to thing, and it's like she mastered everything she tried. And,
well, that's neat.
So I'm guessing that she must have had some magazine or newspaper publication that mentioned this Servants of Awareness thing.
That's actually, sorry to interrupt, but that was exactly what I was thinking, because in searching for them, I found that they left ads in newspapers all across the country, just little classified ads. So that probably is what happened.
Well, I know she used to get Reader's Digest and other publications, and I remember it seemed like the back cover of the Reader's Digest, they had the whole back cover was usually an advertisement for the Rosicrucians.
Wow.
So,
huh?
They were out there advertising.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but to tell the truth, I really don't know how she got involved.
Okay.
David Wooser, I think, I don't know if it was him and Art were just trying to get my mother to volunteer us as recruits. And the deal is we would go out there and work in the Guano cave in exchange for the Carbogen treatment, or I don't know what to categorize them as, the experiences. So that was the deal, and my brother and I said, "What the heck?"
And your brother was older or younger?
He was 3 years older. His name's Ed. And we drove down there. He had a Jeep 70. He had a Dodge Challenger, which we both loved. We drove that down to Phoenix, and I think it's in that little movie that I sent you, the cave, where I did the 360 of the area, and
right.
his car is in that little video.
Okay. Yeah, I do recall the car. Yep.
Yeah, it's blue with a white vinyl top. So we get to Phoenix and we meet all the people there, and I wanted to sort of rattle those off out of the ones that I can remember. So it was at Art and Claire Pickering's house in Phoenix. And some of the people that were there at the house, there was a fellow that was maybe, I don't know, 24, 25. His name was Bill Moody. And he was a hippie, had long hair. And in addition to doing Carbogen therapy, he would in turn tell his young lady friends that he could provide them with orgasm therapy.
Would he say that as a joke, or was he serious?
I think he was very suave and good looking, and that might have worked for him. I wouldn't doubt it.
Right.
And
that's a hell of a pickup line.
It is. I love it. It's stuck in my brain all these years. And at some point in time, he had like a little Spitfire, a Triumph Spitfire or something like that. And he took me out to his house, which was like 20 or 30 miles outside of Phoenix. And I guess it was his parents' house. It was a giant house. And he played guitar. And so he had a couple of guitars, and we were playing our guitars and goofing around, and then drove back. So that's Bill. There was a fellow there named Rick Robertson, who had been in, oh boy, what's the thing that Kirstie Alley is in? It's a religion that was based on the
Oh,
sci-fi writer.
Scientology?
Pardon?
Scientology?
Scientology. Yeah. Rick was in Scientology, and he was on one of those merchant ships that went all over the place, and basically to pay for the classes in turn for basically slave labor. And so when he figured out that he didn't like it, he jumped ship when they got back to the U.S. and somehow or another he found out about this Carbogen therapy thing. So he joined in. There was one other okay. So when you had the Carbogen therapy,
Right.
Art would be on. Well, they had a low-level water bed that they would have you lay down on. Art would be on one side, and then there was this other fella on the other side, and they were. Yeah, I have no idea what they did. I guess they were new because it's not like you want when you're having a Carbogen experience, you may or may not have physical movement. So I'm sure they were there to protect you from harming yourself because you're not aware of the outside world.
When you're when you're doing the therapy, are you bound in any way, or are you just in bed or
laying in a bed
laying in a bed?
And Art turned on the gas, and it gave you a World War II fighter pilot thing to put on, and you inhaled the mixture, and after a while, they could tell, I guess, when you were under, and they'd remove the mask.
Okay.
And so they would let you have your experience, and when you became aware that you're back in the real world, they were sort of like a welcoming committee kind of thing. So this other fella, I don't recall his name, but I don't know if this is relevant or not, but he was gay, and he had a girlfriend that was a dwarf. So
that's an odd combination.
Well, let me say this about that. My first girlfriend's oldest brother had a dwarf for a girlfriend, and they got married actually.
Huh.
So, and they I'm chalking it up to gay guys want a beard, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that term. They have somebody in their life to make people think that they aren't gay.
And this would have been especially true and important in, what year was this? 1970?
72.
When homosexuality was still very frowned upon.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense then.
And then this is a disconcerting subject. The dwarf, there's little people and dwarves. Little people are just small people. Dwarves have short legs and arms.
Huh,
So
okay.
She was with this guy. I'm sorry, to wipe her ass because she can't reach her ass. Well, dwarves can't. I don't know. I'm guessing that was what the deal was, and somebody put that thought in my head, and I wish they hadn't. So, anyways, so they were there, and that guy, he was just real genuine and polite and nice, but the only time I dealt with him was during the therapy. So
good. So he was a good guy. He was a nice guy. He just may have been trying to conceal the fact that he was homosexual by being possibly, right?
Yeah, I never had discussions with him at all, really.
Okay.
I recall. So
That's a very interesting scenario.
yeah, and they lived at Art and Claire's house.
Okay.
They had a bedroom to themselves, and they lived there. And when people would come out, or when they do the therapy, they had a bedroom for that. Art and Claire had their bedroom, and then they had maybe one or two other rooms for like when people came to town for the Carbogen therapy or whatever. And when my brother and I were in Phoenix, we got one of those rooms to stay in. So Art and Claire were very generous with their time and effort, and so and they had a swimming pool too, so it was a nice place. And I think one of the videos I sent you was that was Rick with the lizard on his head.
Right.
Okay, so that was in Art and Claire's pool.
Do you have any idea where Art and Claire got their money from? It sounds like a very nice house and very nice property.
It was. I wouldn't have known that. I would have never thought to inquire.
Okay. It's not important. I was just curious.
Yeah, well, you can't count on an 18-year-old to ask any important questions. So what the deal was is, we landed in Phoenix, stayed a few days, and then they wanted us to come out to the cave, and so we drive out there, and it's like 7 miles west of Baus, Arizona, which is real close to the California border. And it seems like they had to have somebody come with us after we got to Baus to help us find the way out to the cave, because it's desert roads and they're not clearly marked, and it's like you got to pay attention or you'll get lost. So we got there to the cave site, and they had a cabin there, and the fellow that was running the show was this fellow named Mitch, and later on there was a fellow that came out named Paul, who ended up being I guess the chef. He'd cook all the meals, which was a nice thing. But Rick and Ed and I and Mitch would do the I hesitate to say mining, but we were trying to dig this hole in the ground that had been dynamited shut a long time ago, and so we were trying to find a new way in, I guess, or recreate the way in.
So there had been a cave entrance, and it had been dynamited shut, and you were trying to burrow make a new entryway into the cave.
Well, the cave was the entrance to the cave. Well, here, I've been waiting for you for the last hour. This is my rendition of the. God dang it! Why is that blanking out?
That happens when you have those backgrounds on, but now I can see it. I can see it now.
Oh, okay. So, anyways, there's the entrance to the cave, and it was like a 20 by 80 flat area, and then the cave that we were creating was this shaft, which went down, I don't know, 75, 100 feet, and then at the bottom, Mitch would go in and he rolled his own dynamite.
Wow. That takes guts.
Well, you have to have a license to do it, I guess. But this, and I don't know if you're familiar at all with dynamite, but it comes in like it's like cookie dough. And so you get this, he had a roller that was about the size of it was a little bigger than a kindergarten pencil. And so he would roll up this, it wasn't paper, it was more like, or it was real thick paper, I guess. He'd roll it up and make a little tube, and then he'd stuff the dynamite down in the tube and then put in a fuse and seal the top. But so, yeah, you have to be real careful when you're assembling these things.
Right.
And keep fire away, fire bad, you know. So he would go down there and drill holes in the rocks, stick the dynamite in there with long fuses, and he'd run back out, and we'd sit around waiting for the kaboom, and then we'd go investigate and see what it did. With every time he did that, we'd hope that we'd break through, but we never did. So try this again.
I can see that very clearly.
Okay. So there was a truck and a pulley and a bucket.
Right.
The bucket was an old gas tank out of a car with the top of it. I guess they took an acetylene torch and made a big hole in it. So it had ropes affixed on both ends. And so whoever was down in the hole would pull this rope down to get the bucket down the chute, and you'd fill the bucket up with rocks and then yell up top that it's ready to go. So Mitch would get in his truck, and he had a specific spot where he would drive to get the bucket up to the top without, running into the pulley with the bucket. So, and then we'd dump the rocks out and, lather, rinse, repeat. And, it was an ocean nightmare.
This sounds like there are so many ways that it could have gone terribly wrong.
There were. And see, most of it was, you could sit down on your butt and sort of slide down, but there was places in there that were, you had to lay down and sort of shimmy through, and it was big enough for the bucket, the gas tank bucket, but people had to watch what they were doing. So when they would bring a bucket up, sometimes the bucket would get stuck, which we'd have to remedy that. Sometimes the bucket would twist around and a rock would fall out. And most of these rocks were like bowling ball size. So when you listened for the rocks coming down the chute toward you, and hopefully you were in a spot where you can press yourself up against the wall when it's ricocheting down the chute. So, and luckily we survived all of that. And thinking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, when you're young, you think you're invincible.
Right.
That must be the only way that we would have been convinced to do that.
Right. That's probably why they had to recruit a couple of younger guys, because they needed somebody crazy enough to do that.
Yeah. But, we got the Carbogen treatment. So there was the best of times, the worst of times. And what made us, Ed and I and Rick, we rode down there with Rick as well, I believe. And Art brought the Carbogen tank out to the cave, and he gave Rick a treatment, and Rick, he didn't have the other fellow with him. He laid Rick down in, we had bunk beds in that little cabin, laid him down in one of the bottom bunks and gave him the treatment. I don't know what really happened, but he flailed around or something and kicked the wall, and so and that's why there's usually two people there to keep you from doing something weird. I just recalled this today. I remember coming to from a therapy session, and my arms were outstretched, and I didn't know why. But obviously you can have things happen to you that are physical rather than just laying there. What the variety of those things are, I don't know, but
wow.
It didn't normally happen.
So while you're under the Carbogen therapy, you are completely disassociated from the real world around you?
Oh,
like
yeah.
You don't know what your body is doing or anything?
You have no inkling. It's just, your awareness is witnessing whatever it is and your experience. And I can tell you, when I first started doing it, it was amazing and pleasant and thrilling. And I don't know how many treatments I had, probably in the teens, but later on, it got to be, there was a lot of trepidation about it, because it's like your body knows what you're going to do to it, and it's like it's rebelling a little bit, because that mixture is supposed to be enough carbon dioxide that it makes you think you're dying, but you're getting enough oxygen that you've never been so alive in your life. So it's like this, it's your body is going to be fighting itself when it does this.
That sounds pretty intense. What did you think you were going to get at? I mean, obviously it was fun. You were young, it was, like doing, LSD or something like that. But I assume they told you there was some kind of end game, right? Like some kind of spiritual or psychological purpose, or you were just along for the ride?
I guess the end game was you hope that something phenomenal would happen, or you'd get some revelation out of it.
Enlightenment, basically.
Pardon?
Enlightenment.
Oh, well, it's an unknown.
Okay.
Whatever you were just hoping to find something that meant something to you, or might make you realize something. And that never happened to me. It's just I had these experiences, and I'm like, why the heck did that happen? Well, let me say this. Out of the Carbogen therapy that I had, actually, there was something. They came away as prophecy, because things happened in my life that when it happened, I said, oh, that was from that Carbogen therapy that I had.
Did your brother have similar experience?
I don't know as if I talked to him about it.
Huh. Can you and do you mind giving a specific example? I understand if it's too personal.
Well, no, I would be glad to tell you, but I've forgotten what they were. But I will tell you, the one that is still unresolved is I was sitting cross-legged in front of a campfire with a Native American tribal elder, I'm assuming, and the subject matter was the third stone from the sun, which is the earth. And also, the third stone from the sun is one of my favorite Jimi Hendrix songs off his first album. So that has yet to be resolved, and I don't know if it ever will be. So now, what that could mean to me down the road, it's anybody's guess. It's like maybe I go with a Native American friend of mine to a reservation, and we go in the tent that they heat it up, and you have a vision or something or other. But I don't know.
Huh. But you, in your opinion, though, as you're looking back, you do feel like the Carbogen therapy did it inspired some kind of actual visions of something supernatural, paranormal, psychic, however you want to word it. You do believe that you had meaningful experiences that came out of it.
Well, yes, ultimately, I think it was a good thing, but you didn't understand it at the time. It took years for that to crystallize, let's say. But also, I don't know if I had mentioned how when I came back to Wichita. Well, let me back up. Rick and my brother and I were doing the cave thing, and my brother was at the top of the shaft. I was down in the bottom, and Rick was in the cabin or something or other. Well, Art and this Paul fella that was the chef were talking at the entrance to the cave, and my brother overheard Art saying, "Boy, I wish we had more workers like you. The Smyser brothers don't want to get up very early." and so my brother was just highly insulted by that. So he yells down at me to come up. So I come up, and he says, "Let's go get our stuff. We're leaving." And so my brother was pissed, and he wasn't talking. And then Rick realizes we're leaving, and he says, "Hey, can I come with you?" So he took me back to Phoenix, but on the way to Baus, Ed told us what Art had said. And so I guess I was okay with it, but it's sort of a sad way to end things like that.
So at that point, when your brother ended it, you were like having a good time? You were enjoying your experience?
Well, see, out in the desert in Arizona with no air conditioning and no toilet facilities, it was like basic training in the army. I don't know. It was worse than that, because you were taking your life into your own hands every day.
Right.
So anyway, back to the subject of the resolving the therapy sessions. I had one that I told you about this when we talked the other day, or texted back and forth.
Oh, right, the traumatic one.
Yeah. So I'd like to relay that to you. So when I got back to Wichita, just at random times, I would have naturally occurring uh, Carbogen experiences. I could feel my body tingling like at the start of a experience, and then if I let it go, it would do something. But I was able to, and I didn't really want to do that. So I would try to stop it. I would, open my eyes if I was aware enough, and shake it off. Um, but this one time, I became aware of a Carbogen-like experience, but it was already in play. I didn't have the warm-up to bail out. It was just there. And this was a giant, real thick book in front of me. And the pages were flying by like somebody had turned on a fan, and the pages were just flipping, flipping, flipping. And when I saw that, I went, I inhaled audibly, one of those inhales of instant fright. Yeah, it was just, fear gripped me. And so that brought me out of my Carbogen stupor. and I'm laying in my bed at my parents' house. I reach up for the light on my headboard. It was a little clip-on light. I turn it on, and the bulb goes poof. So I'm like, even doubly scared. Like,
that actually happened? That really happened?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, the light. It's one of those deals where you turn on the light lights up for a millisecond and then burns out.
Wow.
And pops. Yeah. So yeah, that was just, and then I had to get up and turn on the light for the overhead light.
So it's like an acid flashback, but it was a carbon. Oh, I'm sorry. Was the story still going? Please continue.
Oh no, it's that's what you always heard about LSD is you'd have flashbacks. They never said anything that this might happen to you, and I don't know as if I discussed it with anybody because it was just I would tell a few people about the Carbogen therapy and going out to Phoenix, and I could tell most people were just they thought I was loony or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sort of hard to swallow those stories. I guess it seems like an end game thing is. I think Art had told me about a fella that had the Carbogen therapy, and after one experience, he was able to play the piano, and he'd never played the piano in his life, and
Wow.
something prompted him to try it, and he just knew how to do it.
Huh.
That's the only real world thing I can think of that anybody had.
David, it's like it's great that you came out. You weren't harmed by it. It's a funny memory. I think it's a hilarious story. It's awesome. But I keep asking myself, why did they bring people down there to do that? And did they really think they were going to get all that guano out of the cave? It just seems so. It seems so odd to me that they went out of their way to bring people from hundreds of miles away to mine bat guano. I mean, I can't shake the suspicion that there's something else going on. And maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the story was that this cave had twice as much guano in it as Carlsbad Caverns. and that if they could get into it and mine it, it would pay for the operation and more.
Okay.
It was, they were looking at dollar signs, and they were looking for young men that could be duped into doing this.
So you think it's that simple? I wasn't aware that you could actually make that much money with bat guano.
Well, that was the story, but we didn't get to that end game.
Well, I do want to tell you that is the story that Vicky knows. Vicky is the one who runs the Cosmic Awareness Communications Network.
Right.
She told me the same exact story. So as far as Vicky knows, that is the story. That they got this business idea that they could get this guano and make a lot of money. She didn't know anything about you or the people that were brought in to do it. She had just heard about this business venture that they attempted. So as far as Vicky knows, that was the motive, and you weren't used for anything else, and they really were just trying to get the guano. That just sounds so crazy to me personally. Like I can't.
Well, and that's why when I told people about it, they're like, "You must be crazy," because it is unbelievable. All this is unbelievable. So, well, when you said this whole story is funny, I thought you were in the text message you said that. I thought you were talking about one of my Carbogen experiences.
I did. Those are very funny too. You told me a couple that really had me laughing. You told me one that your brother had, where the samurai was chopping his head off over and over.
Just kept chopping and chopping. So that was a thrill, I'm sure.
Right.
But that's the only one that he ever relayed to me. But that was, that wouldn't be easily forgotten. So I was going to run down some of the Carbogen subjects if you want to hear them.
I'd love to.
And I believe I already told you about the campfire with the Native American elder. There was a time when my brother and I were walking into the house in Phoenix, and I think Art was coming out with some fella, and in a subsequent therapy session with this other fella, he told Art that he saw me at the Last Supper.
Wow.
Sort of like, where'd he get that from? So
that's pretty intense.
Subliminal seeds were planted when he saw me the first time, I guess.
Oh,
I don't know.
You think maybe that's what was happening? That he was planting seeds?
Well, no, not intentionally, but just subliminally, he saw me and had, I guess, the mental image of me and transferred it to whoever. So, I thought I had more than this. I told you about everything except this one. The last one is the funny one I thought you were talking about. Is you go to the same place every time when you start breathing the mixture. And mine was like an infinite area, but it was like two, doggone it, it was like two planes that were like 30 degrees from each other. And and they were like a record. They were both spinning at an ungodly rate. But in the middle, where the spindle would have been, it would it was sort of like a roulette wheel. It's like all these images were going around, and then it would land on one, and then it would come out and envelop you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But this one time, I'm watching the spindle for, what's going to happen next, and I see this, what appears to be well, and this is really far off. It's 100 yards at least from the center of this thing. So I see this wavy line coming out, and it gets closer and closer. I'm like, what the heck is that? And then it turns out, or I realize it's a snake coming straight at me, and no end to it. And then it gets up close enough to me. It's got Lucille Ball's head on it. And so that stuck with me. That was my samurai sword story.
Oh man, now I do remember. That is the one that had me laughing.
Yeah. That's I still have the images of that in my mind.
That is wild, man. I wonder why Lucille Ball.
Who knows? Well, and I'm like, well, why was it Lucille instead of Carol Burnett?
Right.
Well, Claire Pickering had red hair. Well, I take that back. She and Art were, I think, in their 70s. And Claire had that, I'm sure she had gray hair naturally, but she had it dyed red. I say red, but it was actually orange. which was, you didn't want to say anything about it. You just saw it and moved along.
Right. So,
yeah, I was trying to find some red-haired woman correlation there. So maybe.
So after you and your brother left, you did you ever have contact with any of them ever again?
I didn't.
Wow. So you had that. How long were you there for total? Like a month or two, or?
Oh, we were there like 6 months.
Oh, 6 months.
I believe so.
Oh wow! So okay, that is significant. I mean, you put in a lot of labor there. You worked there a long time.
Yeah. Well, and then we'd work for I don't know how long, and then come back to Phoenix and have therapy sessions. Well, we talked about Art and Claire having such a nice house, and I don't know who ramrodded this deal, but somehow or another they were getting food stamps. I don't know if it's Claire and Art that were getting it. Maybe it was one of the other people, but that was our sustenance out there at the Bat Cave.
What a bizarre situation.
Yeah. You can't make this stuff up.
You got a couple young guys mining bat guano in the desert while living in what's almost a mansion with people who are collecting food stamps.
Yeah.
I don't understand. It's just so bizarre. Maybe it really is just a bizarre thing that happened. But it just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the big piece of it is, and I believe I told you this the first time that we spoke, but the whole reason I even started researching this stuff is because Fred Chrisman, who is a very shady, weird guy, he was asked about the Servants of Awareness by the grand jury in New Orleans for the Jim Garrison's JFK hearings. And It's just a brief question because Chrisman denies any association, says he has nothing, he doesn't know anything to do about them, or doesn't know anything about them. But it's just that's a very strange association because Fred Chrisman was undoubtedly into something. I don't know what it was, but he was just that guy was into something, and or he's like the greatest grifter of all time. I really don't know. He's still a mystery to me, and it's just not just me. There's a lot of people who have tried to figure Fred Chrisman out, and nobody can quite do it. But just the fact that Doobie, who started the Servants of Awareness, was connected with Chrisman, just I can't shake the feeling there's something weird about the whole scenario.
Well, I remember you telling me about him, and it sounds shady.
Yeah, but that's the really interesting thing, though, is I can tell you that since the last time we spoke, I found out some stuff about Doobie, and I think Doobie was sincere, and I think he really believed in everything that he said. And I could be wrong. I'm by no means an expert, but I don't think Doobie was a con man. And I think the Servants of Awareness, which was the organization of awareness under him, I think they were sincere. But it still leaves so many odd questions because, I mean, they were clearly well funded. It was a large organization. It's just so weird, man. It's so weird.
Yeah. Oh, well, back on that one Carbogen experience, the book, I, for the longest time, thought it was the Akashic Records.
Right.
And then I thought, well, the Akashic Records are more of a experience rather than a book. So I don't know what the book would have been unless it was maybe the Bible. I don't know.
Wow.
It's hard to say, but it just gripped me with fear seeing it.
That sounds intense. Yeah. So what, like right now, with your general beliefs, do you are you a materialist, or do you believe that in spirituality or some kind of a higher force?
Well, I've never chased the almighty dollar, but I realized early on that I didn't want to do manual labor all my life. So I went to school to become an electronics technician. So that's what I did. And I'm retired now, but and since I've I've had 2 marriages, and after my second divorce, well, my father was a policeman, and so growing up in high school, a lot of my friends did drugs of every kind, and I never did partake because I didn't want to get caught and bring shame to my father. So, but anyways, here in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, I've taken it upon myself to do what I hadn't done as a teenager. So consequently, I was growing my own magic mushrooms.
Nice.
Yeah, because I don't have any cartel connections. But I found some guy that sold me LSD as well. And so I tried that a few times, and magic mushrooms as well. So I'll tell you what it did for me. It made me realize that, and this has been said by many people, we're all one, and I'm not going to say if there's a God or not, but there is a cosmic consciousness that envelops everything, I guess. So I haven't been consciously seeking salvation or revelations or anything, but I wanted to experience those things just so I would know what they were like, and that's what I came away with.
When you say you came away, you mean you came away from the Carbogen therapy, or with the stuff that you've done recently?
Actually, it was the LSD made me realize that. Mushrooms, you hear about people having bad experiences. I don't necessarily think they're bad experiences. Oh, pardon me.
Okay.
I thought maybe if I got away from the camera that you could see what my real room looks like. Maybe not. Yeah, that was just UPS or somebody. I'm sorry. Where was I, or where were you?
You were talking. We were talking about how you came away with the understanding that all is one, and it was LSD experience. Oh, bad trips on mushrooms.
Yeah, or LSD. I don't necessarily think they're bad trips, if you want to use that term. I think it's things that you need to experience to help guide you through life. And I've had wonderful and bad subject matter, but I didn't take it as bad. I thought of it as a learning experience. But do I have your email address?
You do. You emailed me the Skype.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Connection.
I'll email you a little 5-minute video that will explain what this one fella thinks of mushrooms, which is actually the way I feel about it. Well, mushrooms and LSD.
Mm.
So, and I've since I've moved to Texas, I've been here about a year. I've moved into an apartment to be close to my son and my grandson. So I don't do any of that stuff since.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just wanted to do it enough to get a handle on what the thrill was.
Right. No, yeah, that's definitely understandable. It's intriguing to me that you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Here's the end game.
Okay.
So the first time I'm on mushrooms, or the second time, it was one of the first two. At the very end of it, well, let me back up. There's a fellow named Terrence McKenna.
I know Terrence McKenna.
Okay. So he says that when you do a heroic dose of mushrooms, which is 5 dried grams, which is 50 grams before you dry them out. He says if you do a heroic dose, you will hear a voice, and the voice will be in your native tongue, and you can converse with this voice. So I found that very intriguing, and so I did have a voice talk to me on occasion, but one of these first 2 times, at the very end of the experience, the voice said the word prana. So there's in, I don't know if it's Hindu or Indian or who knows what. They categorize that there's 4 kinds of breath. So there's the regular air that you inhale, there's burps, there's farts, and then there's prana, which is spiritual breath, like when you meditate or whatever and get the kundalini serpent fire going down your spine. So my thought was, well, it was what it was, the voice was telling me prana because I think I was breathing really, really shallow, and I think it was instructing me to breathe deeper and try to encourage this prana spiritual breathing. But in the meantime, I'm going, you know what? You could take prana out of the equation if you did mushrooms on Carbogen. Because it makes you breathe without you trying to breathe like that.
Right.
So, and I contacted several outfits that were doing mushroom research or experimentation. One of them was, I think, John Hopkins. And I have been summarily ignored with that suggestion. But I seriously think that is something that should be looked at, just because I was thinking of this. I'm like, gee, how many people out there have had Carbogen therapy and done mushrooms in the world? And I'm like, maybe a handful.
Right.
Out of 7 billion people. But not at the same time.
Yeah, I've never done Carbogen therapy, but that sounds like a pretty crazy experience. I'd volunteer for that. I think you can come away with something by doing that.
Well, yeah, it might. You might end up seeing the stuff that Tesla saw.
Just dissolving into thin air. Just your body just evaporates.
Yeah.
You join the one, join the all.
So yeah, wild stuff. So that was I think somewhere down the line somebody will do that, but and I've been trying to. Did you hear that?
Yeah, what is that?
That was my foreboding ringtone. That's my second ex-wife.
Oh.
Sent me a text message.
That's awesome.
So, anyway, so that is something that it would have to be a young person to do that, because I'm 66 years old, and I think it would I'd have a cardiac arrest or something rather, because it would be intense, and you'd have to have a strong mind and strong body to even attempt that.
Right.
And you'd have to have sitters, somebody to administer the Carbogen to you. So there you have it. Well, and Terrence McKenna, he's done anything and everything. So, and he's a very learned man, and I really enjoy hearing his talks. I get them from YouTube, but very interesting, intelligent, smart man.
All right. Yeah, I listen to quite a bit of McKenna. He's definitely a character. And the interesting thing with him in the psychedelic research, the same kind of angle is that he has spoken a couple times about how he was worked with the CIA in some kind of tangential capacity. And again, that's the interesting thing with all this. It's like the intelligence groups, they dip in and out of all of this psychedelic stuff, and that's why my paranoia is probably maybe a little overraised to it, to where I look for that connection anytime I hear of anything like the Servants of Awareness. And I'm aware of that. I mean, I try to monitor myself and then be like, yeah, Jeff, you might be reaching here. But
I'm thrilled to hear you say that, because it makes the story that much more interesting.
But, I mean, they do legitimately, they dip in and out of it. I mean, the very early, the earliest hallucinogenic research, like when they went down to Mexico to find the magic mushrooms, back, I think this was the 50s, and LSD, all this stuff is all connected with the CIA, and that's actual proven historical truth, that's real. That's not paranoia or anything at all. That is real, and so they just dip in and out with it, and people have been trying to figure out why. And McKenna himself has made a couple comments about his association with the CIA. So I don't know, it's just weird stuff, man. Weird stuff.
Interesting.
I mean, it may just be as simple as just wanting to know the effects of it, to know how it could be used, or to safeguard against it being used as a weapon. And I assume that they probably quickly learned that it wouldn't really be that useful of a weapon. But they wouldn't have known that in the 50s, I mean, all they knew were these stories about how people could take this stuff, and, you read about the legends of what, LSD, maybe it's not even a legend. I mean, LSD did revolutionize our culture, so yeah. I don't know. I mean, the 60s were fueled by LSD, and the country hasn't been the same since the 60s, so who knows?
True.
Anyway.
Oh, Jeff, I'm so glad you're doing this. I really appreciate your time and effort.
I appreciate your time, so I'm glad that you found it worthwhile, because I don't want to waste your time, but I find it fascinating, and I really want to get this documented. I just want to get it down, and I think these stories are great, and realistically, we'll probably never know the full story of what happened with your situation. Although, like I said, I do want to be clear that Vicky, who I trust completely, I've gotten to talk to Vicky quite a bit. She validates your story. I mean, she just, as somebody who wasn't in your role, who was in a different outsider role, and heard about the story from the people, she heard the same story. They just thought they could mine back guano. I guess. Go ahead.
She was in Los Angeles.
Oh, Vicky?
Yeah.
No, the awareness, the group is actually here in Olympia, Washington.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So most of this stuff, all of this stuff, stemmed originally from Seattle, right? Like Ralph Doobie was from a very small town right outside Tacoma. Tacoma is just south of Seattle.
Right.
So all of this stuff happened in Seattle, and then emanated out, and then they became a nationwide organization after Ralph died. Ralph actually, by the time he died, he was in Kauai, the little island of Hawaii, and and so I don't want to talk your ear off, but so Ralph, the reason why I thought for sure he was a con man was because he went to Kauai, and the thing was they were starting these awareness little schools all around, and they were going to send him tithe money in Kauai, and he's just going to live in Kauai and be this seer mystic kind of guy. And I was like, that sounds so shady. And my first instinct was that he's just a con man and was using all these people, but it actually doesn't support that. Like, the more I research, the more I now believe that Doobie, whether rightfully or wrongfully, truly believed in what he was doing, truly believed in the importance of his spiritual mission, and was a good man. Like, if you read his obituary in Kauai, he was trying to start some kind of hospitals where he could provide free medical care to, I think it was people with cancer or something like that. But I think he was the real deal. I think he was a good guy and had some kind of crazy thoughts, but not crazy thoughts. Had abnormal, non-mainstream thoughts, but was a good and authentic and sincere person.
You did mention starting up, I guess, different centers around the U.S. That's what I think was supposed to be targeted with the money from the Batcave. Is they're going to be able to create servants of awareness treatment centers in different cities around the U.S. So I do remember them saying that. So that's not going out to Kauai. That doesn't surprise me.
Right. No, yeah, that makes sense, and that would it's crazy, but it's not. Well, it's not crazy. It's odd. But if you guys could have reached the guano, maybe it actually would have been a profitable venture. In which case, I would look like the idiot because I mean, just because it sounds wild doesn't mean it's totally irrational. I mean, yeah, I didn't realize there was that much money in bat guano. I had no idea.
Well, they seem to think there was.
Man, that is such a wild story. But yeah, I mean, I thank you. So do you have anything else you want to share? If you do think of anything, I'm happy to listen at any time. Just text me or email me or whatever.
Well, I've got a half dozen sticky notes with stuff all over them, and my pictograms. I think I've exhausted all the memories that I can grab a hold of for the time being. I wouldn't. Well, now I did remember about the natural occurring Carbogen fear factor thing. I did remember that between last time I talked to you and now, but I'm not so sure I'll remember anything else. But if I do, you'll be the first to know.
All right, awesome. And so when I do write this up, how do you feel about me like using your actual name, or do you want me to just call you David and leave your last name out of it?
I don't mind.
Okay.
I've been my things I've said have not been believed before, so just throwing more wood on the fire.
Well, I mean, the way I want to do it, the way I'm going to do it is to tie it in. I'm going to give a backstory of Doobie, Servants of Awareness, and let people know what this organization is, and then then tell your story of how you fit into this. So, I mean, it's a crazy story, but it's not. I mean, you're obviously telling the truth. I mean, it's yeah. I don't know.
I will tell you, everything I've told you is the truth.
Right. I don't doubt that at all, to be clear, David. The only reason I said that is because you made a comment about how a lot of people have thought that you were making it up or crazy or whatever, and I don't believe that. I think you just had a really unique experience.
Vicky, it seems like maybe she might have been at the home base for Servants of Awareness, and I think she was the one that made up the monthly newsletter.
That sounds like something Vicky would do. At that time, she should have been pretty young, and I've seen pictures of her. She was a very cute blonde. I would say she looked very attractive. So I would think if you saw her, you would have remembered her, especially as a young guy.
As I recall, she must have been up in Seattle, and she would print out these little newsletter things that were just half dozen pages maybe worth of stuff. with.
That's her. That's definitely her. She still does that to this day. I'll send you the link to the organization. They're still printing those today. You can still subscribe to them.
Well, now, my mother got those, and then she started getting other newsletters that were very similar from a different outfit, and I can't recall what they were or what they were called, but I do remember the newsletters, and my brother kept them for the longest time, and so.
After Doobie died, well, for the years after Doobie died, and this was probably happening while you were there, and you wouldn't have seen this, but there were different, there was a core of people who were in the original organization. After Doobie died, there kind of became I don't know if it can be called a power struggle or just differences of opinion. However, I don't want to project too much onto them, but they broke into different factions, and whether it was because they wanted the money or because they just had different ideas and they were good people. I don't want to assume anything, but they broke into different groups, and I guess most of them ended up just dying. They weren't able to keep up the awareness thing. It was the group that wound up in Olympia, Washington that Vicky runs. Like I said, they continue to this day. And what it is they have, it's actually, I wonder if they do carbogen therapy. So what the whole organization is based around is they have somebody that's called, I think, a transcriber. And what this person essentially does is they channel this thing called the awareness. And this awareness speaks through the person, and somebody takes notes while the person is speaking, because for that period, the person is not there, essentially. They're taken over by this thing. And I never thought to ask if maybe they induce that state with carbogen therapy. Do you think that'd be possible? Do you think you could talk on carbogen? No?
No. You are not in this world.
Okay.
And you don't have control over it. It has control over you.